What's up, it's the Monster Man here, and for Pride Month, I wanted to talk Iceman Bobby Drake, and discuss what I believe to be one of the only natural tertiary mutations we've seen in a character, and this is an ability he's developed in the past decade, and I find this really interesting because Iceman seems to be one of the only mutants to have developed a natural third mutation, and nobody seems to be talking about this. And yet, it's weirdly consistent and used in almost all of his solo series and even some of his X-Men books. Allow me to briefly cover who Iceman is for those who may be new to the X-Men, because as Comics Explained once said, every video is somebody's first, and Bobby Drake is the Iceman. He's one of the original X-Men who initially only had the ability to cover himself in a layer of snow, and he mainly used his ability to create snow-based attacks. He later refined his abilities to have more control over temperature and was able to create true ice constructs. Iceman has always been the heart of the X-Men, a character that just loves to have a good time. He has a lot of parallels to the Human Torch. He likes to make jokes in battle, and is notorious for having flings with multiple women, a few of which who were on the X-Men team. And of course, it is Pride Month, and Iceman has come out in the past couple years as a gay character. However, it should be noted this was not the original intent of the character. He has been retconned into being gay after his younger version time traveled and had Jean Grey, a powerful telepath, freed his mind to essentially reveal Iceman's own feelings to himself. While this is a retcon, I actually feel like it's one that works. It reframes what has become a consistent character trait of Bobby, failing to hold down a relationship, into an experience that puts slightly less fault on Bobby as a character, and it explains away some of his flighty behaviors as one of a closeted man who didn't want to push any relationship too far because he subconsciously didn't want to be with a woman. This retcon also fits with the era of the character's creation because it wasn't really acceptable to be openly gay at that time, so changing Iceman to be a closeted character also fits with the historical context. Furthermore, Iceman is fundamentally the same character with honestly similar character flaws, which makes it easier to accept the retcon. While he is trying to find a more permanent relationship with a man, writers have consistently made his relationships with men end just as quickly as his female relationships. There is some nuance there, as Iceman isn't always ending the relationships himself and is going through fluctuating periods of looking for just fun and looking for actual relationships. And he most recently has tried to commit to one of his first romances, who was Romeo, the Inhuman, only for Romeo to be the one to resist being tied down, which does ring true to the LGBT dating world at times, so it is a bit more nuanced than his past relationship issues. But that's not what this video is all about, so let's get back to his powers. Over the years, Iceman has trained his powers and gotten a large amount of control, but Emma Frost saw the potential in Iceman to be more. She sensed Iceman's secondary mutation as being similar to her own, and trained Iceman to unlock this ability. Iceman gained the power to turn his entire body into ice, flesh and all, similar to how Emma Frost can change her entire body into diamond. This ability is a true enhancement of his powers and survivability. Because he is no longer flesh, he can lose limbs, get holes blasted into him, or even get his head blown off in extreme cases and still regrow his body using ice, and transform that body back into his human form completely undamaged at will. This is Iceman's only documented secondary mutation, and his ability to be a full ice human with absolute control over ice eventually led him to be classified as an Omega level mutant with no upper limit to his ability to control cold and ice. For many years, there was no significant change in his powers until X-Men battled the Atom. This change is also technically a retcon that kind of explains some of the feats Iceman has shown in the past that don't actually make a ton of sense with his power set. One thing Iceman has been seen doing in the past is making ice golems and snow clones. These golems were never stated to be sentient before, so it can be assumed they were fully remote controlled by Iceman. However, in Battle of the Atom, Iceman meets a future version of himself who reveals that he has the ability to create sentient ice constructs that can think for themselves on a limited level. Once this ability is revealed to Iceman, he quickly learns how to create these sentient clones and regularly incorporates them into his fighting style. This is one of Iceman's most consistently used abilities, and at this point it's practically expected that he will pull out an ice golem or two in battle. Now, this has never officially been stated to be a tertiary mutation, however I believe that's one of the only explanations for what this ability is. Iceman has always had control of lowering temperature and manipulating ice. However, it's confirmed by young Iceman that he has never given ice constructs independent control of their actions until he learns about this ability. I believe this is separate from his secondary mutation, as the secondary mutation's purpose is to convert his cells into ice and back again. Multiple mutants have similar abilities, including Colossus, who isn't simply armored, as he actually becomes a full metal human, and Emma Frost, who becomes a diamond human. Neither of those characters can grant any sentience to an inanimate object, but Iceman can. What's even more interesting is that these constructs can maintain their temperature and not melt, and even use Iceman's own ice manipulation to a limited extent to regenerate or freeze others. This was shown by the Ice Golem in Battle of the Atom, who has been suggested to exist for at least a few years without ever melting or losing mass. And this is further shown in Iceman's solo series, where he creates a giant construct golem that restructures its own arm into a blade. And this feat proves that it's not simply the ice moving that itself, rather they have a portion of his power set. Iceman has even been shown creating full body clones of himself, and these clones are shown using his abilities. And I actually believe this tertiary mutation explains a lot of how Iceman survives some of the things he does. And this ability to imprint life on the ice actually explains why Iceman is so hard to defeat, and how he can resurrect himself from nothing in his latest solo series, Astonishing Iceman. If he can physically grant life to ice, it stands to reason he can just as easily transfer his mind, or at least a copy with full sentience and his powers, into any drop of water. As you can see, the implications of this tertiary mutation are quite massive, as he could theoretically create clones of himself similar to Multiple Man with the addition of his power set that could also potentially return to human form. Again, this hasn't been fully proven or delved into, but this further solidifies Iceman as one of the premier Omega level mutants, as his control of ice has gone away from simple temperature control and manipulation, and almost into creating a whole other species of life form using his powers. We've also seen him create ice constructs that can fly, as he does in this throwaway panel where he's creating a flying owl, and we've seen him make ice wings before. And this could even imply that he's able to resist the natural properties of ice itself to give these beings the ability to fly, or maybe even implying that Iceman has a better grasp of physics than we tend to think he does, as he's able to create fully functioning flying structures with his ice. With the living constructs, he's even more of a Green Lantern parallel than he used to be, as he only used, simple structures before, but we've seen them become more intricate now that he has these sentience powers. I do like these changes to his abilities, because it further differentiates him from someone like Storm, who has the ability to control both spectrums of temperature. And when we consider someone like Storm to be Omega level, who can control every aspect of weather and temperature, it almost seemed redundant to have Iceman be Omega level, but you could see when he fights Storm in their battle to see who's the best, they end up stalemating simply because while Storm has more powers and control, Iceman is practically unkillable with the hordes of clones he could make, so it becomes one woman against an army. Especially since even because Storm can control ice and weather phenomenon, she can't make these clone constructs herself. It is undoubtedly a fun ability to see in action, and I'm glad to see Iceman grow in this way, but I'm wondering if it'll ever get a categorization as an actual tertiary mutation. I could see them trying to align the categorization with his ability to turn all his cells into ice, so I could see it being considered an extension of that ability and not a true tertiary mutation, but I think a tertiary mutation is the only category that really fits. If you look at it as an extension of his secondary mutation, I could almost see the argument implying that if Emma Frost and Colossus could create extra diamond or extra metal in the same way that Iceman could, then they themselves would be able to grant sentience to those constructs, but because they can't create more than what's available on their body, they just lose the ability to extend the sentience. Especially someone like Emma Frost already has psychic abilities, should be easy enough for her to grant sentience to another biological life form, or semi-biological in this case, but she can't create excess diamond, so that's just not a thing. Even so, the fact that these clones have independent thought for Iceman and are able to function even with him miles away, like the guard he placed in his Ice Sanctum in his most recent solo series. That guard had full sentience to protect Romeo even when Iceman was away and not directly controlling it, having its own disparate personality from Iceman himself. That to me implies that it's not simply him transferring a portion of his consciousness. Once they start making their own thoughts, I feel like we get into the realm of it being a completely unique and new ability. But I'd definitely love to hear your opinions in the comments below if you think this is simply an extension of his secondary mutation, or if it's truly a new tertiary mutation and we simply haven't had the plot line to delve deeper into that. I also wonder if this has the implication of other mutants getting tertiary mutations naturally. We have a lot of mutants with multiple different abilities, but most of them are manufactured, like the Sinister clones that have like up to 5 mutant powers. Those have been added by Sinister himself and aren't natural mutations. Things like Beast further mutations are usually results of Beast experimenting on himself and not actually something that occurs naturally. So I do really think this is kind of a landmark new space for mutants and X-Men in general, and we've just not given it the time it deserves in the spotlight as something really big that's happened to mutant kind. And maybe that's because Iceman was already so powerful nobody noticed. Which is, you know, one of my theories. Everybody's like, oh, he could always do that. When in reality, no, this is kind of a new thing for him. But yeah, I hope we see this ability grow even more in the future and get used in even more conflicts, and maybe even expanded upon. Like, I would really love to see a true Iceman sentient clone come out as maybe some villain he'd have to face. Although Iceman has already done that, he's fought future versions of himself plenty of times. I just think it'd be cool to have other Icemen running around. Like, imagine if Iceman could clone himself and put a version of himself on every active X-Men team. I just think that'd be hilarious. But yeah, if you found this video interesting, leave a comment down below and please like the video. And hey, thank you for watching. I hope you'll have an awesome day. Bye.